Basically, broke reviews is not intended for children under 13 years of age. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I thought it'd be a lot of fun to do a video on all of the G1 styled Ultra Magnus figures I have, or the G1 Ultra Magnii. you know, um, just to cover these guys like I did in a similar video about Optimus Prime several years ago. Um, I just thought it would be fun to look at all these toys in the same video. And the ones I've decided to cover, I do have more Ultra Magnus figures than this, but these are what I would consider his G1-esque ones. And by that I mean the vehicular modes are basically car carriers, and the robot modes are, well, they're a G1-esque. So, I've got here on the left G1 Ultra Magnus. I've got Siege Ultra Magnus next, and you're saying to yourself, well, he's not there a G1 in vehicle mode. But, well, if you know anything about Siege Ultra Magnus, you know he's extremely G1 in robot mode, hence why he's here, and he is a car carrier, technically. We've got Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus here, and, of course, Masterpiece Ultra Magnus there. And I guess I will talk about these guys in order of how good or bad I think they do their job of being a car carrier, right? So, the one out of these that I think does the worst job, I'm probably going to have to say Combiner Wars, and I'll show you why. So, let me back these guys up, and we'll pull Combiner Wars Magnus out first. And as you can see, and I decided to go with, instead of getting G1 cars, I figured I'd get Generations cars because that's who he's supposed to scale with, right? Because he is from the Generations toy line. And, well, as you can see, the two deluxe cars there on top, for poor Ironhide there, his back wheels are hanging off, and Wheeljack, his front wheels are hanging off. So, not the best. And for the bottom, I couldn't even close up his rear door. So it's not working out super well. And yes, I know we have Masterpiece Bumblebee version 1 on there, but I consider that more a deluxe class figure than anything else. In fact, it's even a little on the small side for a deluxe. But let's go ahead and get him out. He barely wants to come out. It's a tight fit. Okay, so we'll just get we'll just free Bumblebee. There we go. Just had to realign his door. So, yeah, I don't feel this does a very great job as a car carrier. Clearly, that's what he's supposed to be, but whatever. That being said, even though he's not that great as a car carrier, I still think his vehicle mode looks absolutely fantastic, right? Let's go ahead and just relock those back. His, rear door in place, for lack of a better term. And yeah, I swapped around some parts with the Titan's Return Optimus Prime. I basically gave Optimus two of the same gun and then just swapped this one for Magnus because I like these guns better for Ultra Magnus. But yeah, I mean, he looks absolutely fantastic. We'll just take a quick look at the detailing. Really great. No complaints. I mean, it's a fantastic looking figure. I really like the Cybertronian yet G1 styled cab, and I mean, he just looks awesome. He's got a quad missile, so he pretty mean looking, and you can angle these guns up here to kind of be like anti-aircraft guns to shoot down the Seekers flying overhead. So I mean, he's like kind of a rolling war truck, as it were. So I mean, even without cars on him, he looks cool. So yeah, that's my opinion of that Ultra Magnus. Now I'm going to show an next Ultra Magnus I'll show off. Doesn't do that great of a job either. And that is at being a car carrier, and that's Siege Ultra Magnus. Yeah, I did cheat a little bit by having a smaller G1 car on him. But let's go ahead and swap out Ratchet for, let's go with video game sideswipe. Actually, it still works. So I guess he can carry two cars pretty comfortably on top, but he certainly can't do four, which is kind of the gold standard for Ultra Magnus. So he can kind of carry half of the cars comfortably. They're the gold standard for Ultra Magnus. But that's okay. Also, of course, if you grab his gun here, his main robot mode gun, stick that there. And then we'll grab Siege Blue Streak here. I mean, if you have that coming at you, that is one murder death truck of justice. If you're a Decepticon or something on Cybertron, you're going to be a little nervous at that coming at you. I mean, I think, obviously, he's very inspired by the 2000 RID/car robots in vehicular mode, but he looks absolutely great in vehicle mode, I think. And I think of the, quote, leader class figures from the, Siege and Earthrise, this is the only one that I really feel justifies the leader class price. Yeah, he's absolutely awesome in vehicular mode, so yeah, and of course you got a million mounting points for the weapons. That just happens to be the configuration that I like. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about G1 Ultra Magnus, because he does a decent job of being a car carrier, thankfully, so let's get him. Kind of roll him out. And it is a tight fit, but I was able to fit 4 Deluxe Class Generations cars on him. On top, obviously, we got Ultra Magnus, jeez. We have Ironhide and Wheeljack, so let's grab them down real quick. And on the bottom, we got Sideswipe and Prowl. So, not all bad. I mean, does okay. He does okay. All in all, he does a fairly good job as a car carrier. Obviously, it's a little bit tight, but he does manage to fit 4 on him. Comfortably. Tightly, but comfortably, right? So, there you have that. So let's go ahead and we're going to kind of do a size comparison between these 3 before we get to Masterpiece. So let's just roll the Masterpiece backwards a bit here. Don't want to roll him too far or he'll start to get off the table there. So let's go ahead and grab G1, which is the biggest. And then we will get Combiner Wars, who is next in line. We'll line them up cab to cab. We'll lower his murder death guns there just so we can see. And as you can see, I don't know how easily you can see this, but G1 Ultra Magnus is maybe an inch longer, inch and a half longer than Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus. Which I guess makes sense given how much easier that G1 Ultra Magnus can carry those guys, those cars in, his vehicular mode. So let's slide these 2 guys back, and then of course we're going to grab Siege. Let's get him. Now his cab is way bigger and bulkier than than Combiner Wars, because Combiner Wars is roughly G1 sized as far as the cab goes, but his cab is way bigger. But he is a similar length to. He's obviously shorter than the Combiner Wars figure, but he's maybe. He's real close in length. I'd say they're within a hair of each other, right? Within a hair of each other. So, whatever. Let's go ahead and remove Combiner Wars, and then we'll just compare these 2 directly, just so you get an idea of scale there. But yeah, obviously his cab is just way bigger than G1 Magnus's, but his trailer is a lot smaller. So, go ahead and put him off to the side, and then we'll scoot G1 Magnus back a little bit, because of course we're going to do one more comparison between him and the Masterpiece. But we're going to roll the Masterpiece out now and take a look at how he does as a car carrier. And obviously Masterpiece is at a bigger scale, and he accommodates 4 Masterpiece cars pretty well. As you can see, we did have a little bit of a pile up there on his bottom, I guess, but yeah, on top, obviously, we have Ironhide and Wheeljack, and Ironhide, as you know, is a larger scale Autobot car, but length, he's about the same as a standard one. It's just height, he's a bit taller. but it accommodates 2 Autobot cars on top easily, so we'll take those off. Let's get Jack down there. And I will show you that Ironhide can very easily fit in the bottom as well. So we'll get Sideswipe out of the bottom. And we'll just put Ironhide in here just so you can see. Yeah, Ironhide fits without any troubles. And we can even, close up the back with Ironhide in there. So, yeah, he does a pretty great job as a car carrier. They did a great job with the Masterpiece figure as far as the scale goes for him to be a car carrier. And real quickly, we'll do a size comparison between him and G1. So let's go ahead and grab the G1. Give him a lift up and over. As it were. Oh, let's reattach him. There we go. And as you can see, it's a lot bigger than the G1 Ultra Magnus, which is unsurprising. But real quick, we'll just take a quick look at... I accidentally untabbed something there on the Masterpiece. That's what I get for pushing it around on video. But yeah, just to get some close-up shots of the G1. It's G1 Ultra Magnus. We all know what he looks like, and he looks great, in my opinion. I think the figure holds up fairly well nowadays, especially in vehicle mode, but G1 always had, at least, with the original Diaclones inspired G1 figures, they always had awesome vehicular modes. So, now, of course, we're just going to take a look at Masterpiece Magnus here real quick, and clearly this is the best one, unsurprisingly, because it's the Masterpiece. And now these missiles aren't removable on the Masterpiece, but whatever, who cares? Yeah, he looks absolutely fantastic in my opinion. Absolutely great piece to have in your collection, and he looks awesome. So, that is basically going to do it, for the vehicular mode for these guys. So, yeah, I think these are all really good, and they all have different aspects in your collection. Oh, that piece fell off. But it doesn't matter, we're just kind of wrapping up vehicle modes. I'd say all 4 of these guys can fit into your collection in various ways. But of course, when I get to robot mode, I'll be talking about my favorites, yada, 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 and which ones I think are kind of must-haves. But obviously, if you're an Ultra Magnus collector or completist, these are all basically must-haves. And I think they're all pretty good figures in one way or another. So, of course, now I'm going to pause and we'll... Okay, I've got obviously 2 Ultra Magnii here with some intermediate white prime robot modes. And, of course, we are looking at G1 Magnus there on the right, and Siege Ultra Magnus there on the left. And I really appreciate the fact that we finally got another white prime inner robot for an Ultra Magnus figure. Not even the Masterpiece has this. So I think that's absolutely great. Just a few quick size comparisons. I'm going to bring in Siege Optimus. Of course, he's definitely taller than the G1 figure. But we get him next to this guy. And, yeah, they look absolutely great together. Fantastic. So, there's that. And I got another figure that's kind of... It's a white Optimus, but wasn't meant to be Ultra Magnus. This is... Let's just scoot these guys over a little bit. This is Combiner Wars Power Core Optimus or something like that. And I always have this robot on. And the only reason I even bought this figure, because this figure is just, let's face it, kind of mediocre. The only reason I bought this figure was because it reminds me of the inner white prime robot of Ultra Magnus. So that's the only reason I got this, and that's actually what I think of this character is rather than Optimus Prime. So yeah, although he does have the blue eyes instead of the red eyes, but whatever. We'll go ahead and take a quick look at the G1 reissue first, and of course he is just literally a white recolor of Optimus Prime with a different gun, but yeah, I mean, yes, I do have a repro label. It has a Prime sticker on him, because I think of Ultra Magnus as an Autobot leader, same as Rodimus and Optimus, because he did carry the Matrix for a very brief amount of time. So he's still, technically a Prime, we'll say, right? Obviously, just the same as the G1 Prime. I'll show off his articulation just because, even though we all know what it is. He's got a, toe movement there, knee movement, back of the leg movement. Of course, nothing in the waist. This is a G1 figure. Arm can go all the way around. It can bend back because of transformation. We've got 90-degree bend there at the elbow and rotation. And yes, we have wrist rotation. And his head can kind of look up, but that's just kind of mistransforming him a little bit. In fact, a lot of his articulation is kind of mistransforming him. But regardless of that, do I like... Man, the joints in this one are really tight. He won't kind of hold the... It kind of holds because they want to snap. Whatever. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I really like this overall, and it's a classic because it's G1, and it looks great in my opinion, really. But this is obviously a much updated and, frankly, better version. Oops. As much as I like the G1 figure, I forgot to put this heel out. That's my fault. As much as I enjoy the G1 figure, well, this one is better pretty much in most ways there. Just do a quick 360 of them. And there's the main Magnus gun on the back. And, of course, I will show him holding that here in a moment. But, he's got the big two guns of justice, we'll call them. So we'll go over his articulation real quick. He's got ankle rockers. His back of his heel can kind of do that. Whatever. He's got knee bend that much. He's got thigh swivel. He's got ratcheting joint there in the hips. And, of course, most of this articulation is carried over to his full Magnus mode, which we'll get to here in a moment. Of course, he has waist rotation. All the way around there at the shoulder. Out all the way. He's got 90-degree bend there at the elbow. Bicep swivel. Wrist rotation. And, of course, pretty good head articulation. So, the inner robot is pretty poseable, obviously. And I think this looks absolutely fantastic. And I love the fact that they did this for Siege. Because, again, the last time we really got one of these was G1. The only defect on this figure is, yes, some of the blue paint from his, shoulder armor has scraped off onto this guy. So that's a little bit of a shame, but, whatever. Maybe I should buy a second one of these just to display the inner robot. Who knows? I do really like it. So if you want to see what he looks like holding his main gun, I'll just swap out one of his guns of justice for the main Magnus gun. And, of course, it's a little bit loose. That gun just tends to have that problem. And that's what that looks like. Excuse me. And, yeah, I think that's absolutely great. He's got a lot of detail on him, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely fantastic. I love these two guys. So what, of course, I'm going to do is I'm going to pause, arming these guys up, and we'll talk about the final Magnus forms. See you in a minute. We have all of the Magnii into their final robot form. Obviously, only two of these had a white prime robot inside, but hey, I just would show these guys off in a group shot. So, of course, we'll start with Masterpiece and work our way over to Generations. So, Let's go ahead and I'll just start off here talking about the scale of Magnus. As compared to MP10 and an Autobot car. Obviously, Prime's head comes up to roughly Ultra Magnus's chest, which is probably about right for the cartoon because Ultra Magnus was an actually gigantic character. And as you can see, and then of course you got sights. So if we get Prime out of the way, we'll see how he compares just with the Autobot car. And yeah, the Autobot car is maybe about almost as tall as Magnus's legs. So Magnus is obviously a huge masterpiece, which, I guess is about right. So, moving on. Go over to G1 now. And obviously Prime is a lot smaller, G1 Prime, in comparison to Magnus. He doesn't go up to Magnus's chest. He's about the same size to Magnus as Carbot is to Prime. So, definitely significantly smaller. Does that work? Kind of works, but I think G1 is generally the worst for scale, but whatever. So, I'll go ahead and just look at Prime and Magnus, and then get Prime out of the way, and now we'll just compare a car. A deluxe Autobot. And he doesn't even go all the way up Magnus's legs, but hey, whatever. There's that. Now, we're going to talk about the two generations Magnii. And as you can see, we have two different scales here, right? We have the new leader class scale and the old leader class scale. Now, as far as which one do I think works better for Ultra Magnus, I have to say I think as far as scale goes, the old leader class works better for the character because as you see Prime's head, basically it just about goes up to Magnus's chest, which is the same as the masterpiece and probably about right for, quote, cartoon scale, whatever that's worth. But the deluxe car isn't even as tall as Magnus. Not as tall as Magnus's leg, but if we do the new scale, that's about right. And Prime's not overly, Magnus is not overly small compared to Prime. I mean, that more or less works. So really, in my opinion, either scale can work. And as far as which one you prefer, obviously that is going to be down to your personal preference. So there you go. So let's get those guys out of the way. And now, obviously, we're just going to talk about the various Magnii on their own. And we'll just go in reverse order. And we'll talk about Combiner Wars first. And what do I think of this Ultra Magnus? I think he's excellent. Obviously aesthetically slightly different than pure G1, but clearly, just angle the camera a bit. Yeah. He's very G1-esque. So we'll go over his articulation real quick. He's got bend there at the foot, but that's not super useful. I mean, he's got two joints, but that's more for transformation. You can make him even taller if you want, but he's not as stable like that standing, so you're better off having his foot forward. And it's not really super useful foot articulation, but it's there. He has basically a 90-degree bend there at the knee. He's got thigh swivel. He's got ratcheting joints at the hips, so forward all the way. Back that much. And all the way out. He's got no waist rotation. Obviously all the way around there at the shoulder. This hinges up. Let's see if we get any more if the missile comes off. I don't think so. Actually, yeah, you do get more. Missile comes out, off, you can get basically all the way up. Ratchet that back down. Go ahead, put the missile back on. 90-degree bend there at the elbow. No wrist rotation, but he does have finger articulation. And his head can not go even all the way around, but he's got, some head articulation. And I have to say, that is absolutely one of my favorite Magnus head sculpts. I absolutely love the head on this guy. That looks absolutely fantastic. So we'll do a quick kind of, look at the details on him. And he even looks fairly decent from the back. He's got some hollow spots in him, but I don't know. To me, that doesn't look bad. It looks fine. He looks pretty good from the side. And as I've said before, these two guns, was a combination of him and Power Master Prime. So we just swapped the gun because I like these guns with Ultra Magnus better. And, if you like the IDW style look, this is probably going to be the guy for you. I think he's pretty good. And, I'm glad that I have him, even though he's not a super G1 as the other Magnii in my collection. He's still really good. And I would say he's most definitely worth having around. Especially due to his scale with other Generations class figures. Because it is more, quote, the classic scale. I think that works better for the character overall. Plus, it's just a great looking figure. Overall, absolutely fantastic. And very cool. So, alright, he's the only thing I don't like about this figure, he does have a hard time holding on to his guns. The guns fall out of his hands a lot. That is by far the biggest downside to this figure. But other than that, it's fantastic. Minimus Ambus doesn't ruin the figure. The gimmick of having him in the cab is not a big deal. Yes, I know I didn't show that off, but, we've all seen it. But just in case you want to see it real quick, I will show you. If I can see what I mean by dropping the guns. Oh, man, come on. See? There you go. The only time you really have to deal with Minimus Ambus is when you are transforming him into vehicular mode, because the head obviously folds down in there, and you have to take Minimus Ambus out to fold the head down. But other than that, it's not he's not really a concern, doesn't impact the toy that much, and doesn't ruin it, So it's a gimmick that is okay. I'll just, since he doesn't want to hold on to that one for this video, we'll just make it a sidearm here on his, there we go, bottom of his foot. Angle it up. That way it's handy if he needs it later to battle the Decepticons. Alright. There we go. Ultra Magnus number 1. So, now that he's out of the way, we will take a look at, let's go with G1 next. Alright. And, how do I think he looks? Obviously, he is, probably the most abstracted, from being super accurate. But it obviously is G1. And one thing I love about this toy is the fact that he's on wheels. Now, I didn't have Ultra Magnus as a child. Not G, well, none of them, because I was a child, But, he's like a rolling, he just rolls so awesomely. Most Transformers don't do that in robot mode. I don't know if there are any others. But Ultra Magnus is just, so great like that. He's like, this rolling death machine. Obviously, we'll just take a quick look at his detailing. From the front, I do like the way this figure looks. Obviously, it's kind of derpy compared to modern figures, but it's a G1, so it's a classic, and I really like it. From the side, it looks pretty good. From the back, yeah, not so much. Does leave a bit to be desired from the back, but from the sides and the front, pretty good. Of course, I don't like the elongated missiles on the reissue, but them's the breaks. So what sort of articulation does this guy have? Well, he's a G1 figure, so not very much. His head doesn't do anything. He does have wrist rotation, but that's more just due to the fact that he's a parts former, but whatever, I'll take it. He's got nice, strong elbow joints. If you count this as his articulation, I guess his arm can do that, but that's more part of the transformation, so I don't count that, but he's got a 90-degree bend there at the elbow, and his nice ratcheting joints do go all the way around. And that's it. Not very posable. Oh, and I guess, yeah, he's got elbow swivel too, right? So, or I'm sorry, I guess that'd be more like bicep swivel. But yeah, I mean that's basically it. And as far as you know, he can look pretty neat from certain angles. Like I really like the way this looks. The kind of like side profile, I think that makes him look pretty cool. And like I said, I think he's the first leader class because look at that. Look at that. He's basically the same size as Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus. So yeah, I think he is totally a leader class before leader class was even a thing, according to But yeah, I mean he rolls awesome. I guess Galvatron would probably be another example of leader class from G1, but it's neither here nor there. So we'll get G1 Magnus out of the way. Now, of course, we are going to talk about Siege Ultra Magnus. And, well, he is pretty fantastic. You know, I feel he really is, in a lot of ways, his aesthetic is evocative of a, you know, smaller version of the Masterpiece figure, at least in robot mode. Obviously, it wasn't so much the case in vehicular mode, but in robot mode. Wow, I mean, that is an extremely G1-esque looking Magnus and pretty reminiscent of the Masterpiece. Absolutely fantastic rendition of the figure. You know, obviously we got a side gun there, and he's holding one of his side guns, and of course we got this big main gun. So we'll just go ahead and cover articulation real quick. The biggest complaint I have about this figure are the way his default his ankles won't flatten all the way down, so he can't stand totally flat. So that is a pain in the ass, truthfully, but it is the thing I can overlook. So anyways, to get down to his articulation, obviously we got ankle rockers there. We got a knee bend. We got thigh swivel. We can go forward that much. Back not very much. And out that much. He does have waist rotation. He will go all the way around if you're careful, and his arm piece will fall off if you're not careful. Let's get that arm piece back on. Thank you. Okay. All the way around at the shoulder. Basically, this is obviously just the white Robot Prime articulation, but just showing you how well it does with the Prime armor on. Out that much. 90-degree bend. Wrist rotation. Head. Go all the way around. Look up. So he is capable of some pretty sweet poses. And we'll just take a quick look, of course, at his detailing in this mode. And yeah, just another absolutely excellent Ultra Magnus. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And so yeah, he's definitely capable of some pretty cool poses. And let's just try to pose him a little bit. Whatever. Right. You get the idea. Yeah, that's another thing I don't really love about this figure. The handle for his big gun is a little bit loose in his hand. So that is a bit of an issue. It's not a deal breaker or a showstopper, but it is a bit of an issue. Now, lastly, Masterpiece. And we're definitely going to have to angle get the camera up for this one a bit. So, let's see. See if we can get the camera up any more. Okay, let me pause. Camera had to come up just a bit for Masterpiece Magnus because of how gigantic he is, but That's my fault that happened. I'm not gonna totally blame the figure for that. But yeah, obviously he's a great looking figure. I'll give you a quick turnaround. Biggest downside to him, of course, is his butt flap, which everyone in every time they talk about him brings up. But yeah, it is worth talking about because it is kind of a little bit of a design fail, I think, on Hasbro / Takara's part. And yeah, he's pretty fantastic. So let's go ahead and show off his articulation. He obviously has ankle rockers. Does he have knee rotation? No. But he's got knee bends that far, and kick forward that far, and kick to the side that far, kick back that far. Nothing in the waist. 360 there at the shoulder, and his shoulders will flex out to bend out more. He's got 90-degree bend at the elbow, obviously swivel, and his hands are on ball joints. And of course, we got the 1 in 4 fingers of every masterpiece. And head, obviously, is, extremely well articulated as you're useful. He's got an awesome head sculpt. And I'm not going to... Now, of course, he does have different faces, which I'm not going to show off, because this is not meant to be a comprehensive review of everything about Ultra Magnus. And yes, he's got his Matrix chamber. I'll show that off real quick, because I've got a Matrix in there. It's not MP10s. It's the same. MP10s will fit in there, but that's one that came with a Hot Rod figure I got. So, yeah. Anyway. Masterpiece Hot Rod, actually, is who that came. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah. What do I think of Masterpiece Magnus? I think aesthetically, he is an absolute great piece. But truthfully, Siege has the best posability and is the most fun to mess with in robot mode, I think. Out of all these figures, yeah, he's great. But if you have a Masterpiece display, obviously Masterpiece Magnus is a must-have. And let's try to post him a little bit better than just having him straight. So let's do some ankle tiltage here for him. Maybe have him, come on. Bend is getting sort of a fight, some sort of a pose here. Come on, Magnus. Work with me. Work with me. That's pretty. That's cool. That's a pose. That's definitely pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, let's lock his shoulder back in place. And you can lock your shoulders forward or back, depending on your preference. I think it looks better with them a little bit more forward. Got to show that option off. But yeah, that is an absolutely great looking figure. And if you collect them, basically, here's how I feel about these figures. If you collect Masterpiece, I'd say Masterpiece Magnus is absolutely a must-have, right? Oops. Or if you're an Ultra Magnus collector. Duh. But if you don't collect Masterpiece, or you are not a big Ultra Magnus collector, you could potentially give the Masterpiece a pass on if you really wanted to. Because as a toy, it looks nice, but it definitely has its limitations. In fact, if you are mostly a Generations collector, I'd say the one to get is the Siege Ultra Magnus. Because as you can see, he is very close to Masterpiece Magnus in both aesthetic, mostly in aesthetic, right? And in posability, he's actually superior to Masterpiece Magnus. And that's really saying something. Plus, he's got the White Prime robot inside of him, and a great Prime robot, White Prime. To put it mildly, I think his inner figure adds even more value to Siege Ultra Magnus. So that's how I feel about those two. Now, as far as The other two, let's talk about those. G1 Ultra Magnus. I love him. Even though he is, a brickalicious kind of silly looking G1 figure, he is absolutely charming and fantastic. And of course, if you're an Ultra Magnus collector or a G1 collector, you need to have a G1 Magnus. It's that simple. Now, again, if you're not a G1 collector or necessarily a gigantic Magnus collector, you could potentially, not get them, right? And of course, all this is going to depend on your budget and space as well. So, next one, Combiner Wars. I guess the last one. Talk about him a little bit. Is he a must-have? Again, if you are a Magnus collector, obviously yes. If not, not necessarily. I would say, just brutally, just to put it out there, for Generations collectors, Siege is the best. For everyone else, for all the other ones, it's just going to depend on your budget / needs, right? It's just as simple as that. But I do like all 4 of these figures a lot, and I'm very happy to have all 4 of them in my collection because I think they're all really good in their own ways. So that is basically it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. My first video back in a while. That's it. So, as always, live long and prosper. Thanks so much for watching. And if you did like this and you want to see me make more videos, just do me a big favor. Leave a comment. Watch my other videos. It really helps me out. Put me on mute in the background if you want. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Share this out. Whatever you want to do. That's basically it. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.